The Chuckwalla National Monument in Southern California was established just days before the presidential transition through an executive order. While conservationists were happy about this, many miners and landowners were not. My guest today is Greg Herring, who's a retired Marine and independent gold miner. He's here to tell us the impact of this national monument on miners and property owners in the area.
Yes, there are good reasons to protect a lot of things out there. And I think it's wonderful that this country can do that. But when you start abusing it and you take lands away from the public that don't need protection, then you're overstepping your bounds.
I'm Siamak Korami. Welcome to California Insider. Greg, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
There's a large amount of land, 624,000 acres, that has been designated as a national monument around Palm Desert. And you are in opposition to this. There might be chances that this could get reversed. Can you tell us what's going on with this?
Yes, the Chuckwalla National Monument, most of it being in Riverside County, came to being through a executive order, a proclamation signed by former President Biden just days before he left office. I found out about this proposal about 2 years ago, toward the end of 2022. And what I realized was the original proposal was going to encompass, they called it the Chuckwalla National Monument and Joshua Tree National Park expansion. I go, why the expansion? And I realized they were going to try to take part of the lands that I, as a gold miner, we have claims on. Now we're just casual use, small scale gold miners. We use hand tools and metal detectors. That's it. We don't bring in heavy equipment, so we cause negligible disturbance to the land. But we wanted to protect our gold claims. I'm also the former president of the First Class Miners, a gold mining club up in the high desert of Yucca Valley, 29 Palms. And we have claims out there. So I started looking into this as the club's action officer right now. I said, we need to oppose this because they're going to take these lands away, and there's no viable reason that I'm aware of that this particular area in the Eagle Mountains needed to be protected on a monument designation. So that's how I got into it 2 years, just about 2 years ago now. And I started the effort going down the path, talking to different folks and organizations. What's this really about? I even met with the proponent coalition, their director for the National Park Conservation Association out of Joshua Tree, California. And said, what is this? Why are you doing it? And learning a little more about why this is coming about before I could develop a strategy on how we can try to oppose this. And as I talked to more and more people, I realized there's a lot of different groups, diverse groups, not just the miners, that were opposing this effort on a much grander scale. Landowners, recreationalists, rockhounders, off-roaders, dispersed campers, hunters, shooters, recreational shooters, things of this nature. So I said, okay, I will be your voice as much as I can, and let's see if we can't stop the whole thing from happening, and not just that little piece of the Eagle Mountains that I originally had wanted to save. So the Chuckwalla National Monument is 624,000 acres. It was originally supposed to be over 670. So we were able to extract a few key areas. One of them was the Eagle Mountains that I originally wanted to try to save. I got that concession. Then some of the off-roading groups, the off-highway vehicle recreational area out by Mecca, California, that group worked and got that pulled from it. And some concessions were made to energy companies to have some land pulled. But still, 624,000 acres is roughly the size of the state of Rhode Island. And it just boggles my mind that the coalitions led by calwild.org needed to secure, protect all this land. I didn't understand that. I went to, in September of 2023, a reveal, if you will, a press release conference hosted by Congressman Ruiz of the California 25th District. This is where the monument is located. And in this reveal, I call it, because this is where he revealed to all his proponents, and I was able to get an invite to there, even though I was on the opposition. We found out that Congressman Ruiz had submitted a bill to Congress to try to get this done. I go, okay, that's the way it should be done, most of the time. And he stood on the stage and told everyone that night, I submitted this bill knowing full well it will never get through Congress, probably won't even get out of committee. He said, but I submitted it to show President Biden when I hand him this proclamation for the Antiquities Act to be signed as a executive order, that I am serious about wanting it, knowing full well it would never happen through Congress. I go, wow, that to me was a revelation. He needed to make this happen with the Antiquities Act if he was going to get it at all. That's how we kind of got started into this thing. So I started doing some research. Okay, what does the Antiquities Act really say? It was signed into law by President Teddy Roosevelt in June of 1906. And the act is very short. It's about a half a page. But one particular section kind of delineates how much land a president can protect using this act to bypass Congress to protect things of scientific and historical significance, either sites or objects. And the Antiquities Act says, concerning that amount of land, it says, the limit of which in all cases shall be confined to the smallest area compatible with the proper care and management of the objects to be protected. It's like, okay, let's use the reasonable person standard legal concept. In order to figure out how small of an area I need to know what the object is that's being protected. That's just common sense. The coalition that put this together, coalition of conservationists and environmentalists, not only did they ignore that portion of the law, it's blatant abuse of it. So the coalition on page 2, in one sentence, basically this is saying we're ignoring the law. We're not going to do the smallest area compatible with the known object that we're going to protect. And it's mind-boggling why they even put this in the proclamation. But it reads, while only a small fraction of the region has been formally inventoried and a myriad of cultural resources have been documented, there are likely similar historic sites and objects yet to be discovered. So it's, wait a minute, the Antiquities Act says you're going to use the smallest area to protect a known object. But here, the proclamation says we've only inventoried and documented a small fraction of the area. But because we think there's something else out there, we're just going to encompass the whole land and be done with it.
The coalition and people that are pro this national monument, they say that this is going to bring a lot of tourism. It's going to protect the land, the wildlife, and it's going to help the communities that are there. Why do you think this is bad for it to be so big?
Well, there's several reasons. First of all, it's an abuse of the Antiquities Act, which specifies you have to know what the object is.
So they have to really know what's
you have to know what's there, and then you use the smallest area there. But the fact that they admit that they've only documented and inventoried a small fraction of the area. They're talking mainly about Native American cultural sites. And I get it. Let's save those. Let's save those sites because the coalition is saying that they are under danger. I'm not so sure that's true because the land, all of it, is already protected. 40% of that land was already under wilderness designation, which is the highest level of protection in this nation for lands. Nearly all the other 60% was Bureau of Land Management National Conservation land, which has its own level of protection as well. I attended a meeting in December of 2023 with the Bureau of Land Management's Desert Advisory Council, which advises the BLM on management of their land. And in that meeting, we were talking about it because I brought it up to their attention that this was happening. And the BLM's Desert Assistant Manager, Desert District Assistant Manager, Greg Miller, stood up and said, a monument designation adds zero additional protection above what it already has, with the wilderness and the National Conservation Land designations. So it doesn't make sense. So I don't know enough about it, but I have to question, and I did, it's like, why do we need to add the monument designation to protect Native American cultural sites if they're already protected under these other designations now? And they ignored the question. They didn't want to answer that.
So we pulled it up. Can you show us where it is?
Sure. Inside the red border, in the yellow highlighted areas, that is what was designated as the Chuckwalla National Monument. Now, what you'll see inside that red area are a lot of white checkerboards. Those are all private properties of which the government cannot take. So one of the problems with this Chuckwalla National Monument is the owners of all these private properties that you see checkerboarded throughout the southern portion and the western portion mainly, they can no longer develop their land. It's an issue. First of all, they're landlocked. Many of those private properties do not have a Bureau of Land Management designated route to them.
So they cannot get to their land?
They cannot get to their land. Not all of them, but some of them cannot even get to their land anymore because the proclamation says only the current designated BLM routes can be utilized.
Our sponsor today is Shenyun. There's been some negative press on Shenyun recently. Shenyun's mission is to revive ancient and traditional Chinese culture. Shenyun Performance started by a group of Falun Gong practitioners in New York. Falun Gong is a spiritual and religious group which believes in living by truth, compassion, and tolerance, putting others first. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has been persecuting it since July of 1999 in China. Since Shenyun started, CCP has been targeting it in the US and across the globe by playing different kinds of schemes to cancel the shows or impact the performance. The current negative reporting originated from some Chinese social media accounts. And we know that CCP is given a new directive to go after Shenyun and Falun Gong in the US by turning the public opinion against them. If you hear something negative on Shenyun, make sure to do your own research and your own due diligence. Despite all of CCP's campaigns against Shenyun, the show has managed to grow significantly across the world. I highly recommend you go see it. I've been going to it for the last 14 years as they change the performances every year. They're coming back to California. Make sure you go see it. With this monument designation, what will happen to this private land? They cannot create new routes?
They cannot create new routes. They cannot develop their land.
They cannot develop like building? They cannot build anything on it?
Let's take, for instance, Shereko Summit. Shereko Summit is a very small community on Interstate 10 between the Coachella Valley and the Colorado River. It is kind of centralized. It's the only gas station It is the only restaurant out there in the desert along the I-10 corridor. A lot of Americans and tourists use that Interstate 10 to go east and west. And this little community of Chiricahua Summit tries to provide amenities, gasoline, food. They would like to build a hotel and provide, travelers, weary travelers, a place to stay without having to travel the extra hour or so either direction to find a hotel in either Blythe, California, or down in Indio, California. But they can no longer do that. The Chiricahua family has owned that land for almost 100 years now. Started developing it in 33 and helped out General Patton during the World War II training exercises that were happening in our Mojave Desert. They even have the General Patton Museum on site there. But Margaret Chiricahua, one of the big opposition leads like I am to this whole monument, she says, I can no longer develop my land or even purchase land around me now to continue developing, trying to help all the travelers out here on Interstate 10 because this monument has locked up the land and doesn't allow us to do it anymore. That's just one example. The city of Blythe also has issues with this monument as well, encroaching on or near their city over by the Colorado River. The other aspect, besides landowners, that this is impacting, it's also impacting the recreational community. And we're talking everything from off-roading, not just street legal vehicles, but off-highway vehicles that don't have license plates, recreational shooters, hunters, rock hounders that like to go out and find cool rocks and geodes and things like that. It's going to affect them as well. The proclamation...
How is it going to affect them?
The proponents heard us talk about this stuff at several of our meetings. So they put language in there to say, we understand that these are important to the communities. So we're going to allow some of these to continue, and they spell out which ones. However, as long as it's not to the detriment of the things that we are trying to protect, and there's language in the proclamation for that. So what I've seen happen before on other monuments and National Park Service, different various units, of which a monument is one, is they'll put the language in there with that little clause, unless it's going to,
damage something.
And that's the clause they'll use and say, no, that's going to damage this over here. Well, that's going to do this out here. So we're closing this area off and you can't do that anymore. That's what we see happening. The whole area out there is a big recreational area for not just Southern California, for a lot of folks come down in the winter from the north. We call them snowbirds. And they come down to live in the deserts when it's too cold up north. These folks bring money. The Californians bring money. And they spend that money in the surrounding communities as they go recreate out in our desert. Now, as this recreation dwindles now, those dollars are no longer going to be there. The folks that come down and like to camp in our desert for BLM rules are 14 days at a time, then you need to move 20 or so miles, and then you can camp there for 14 days. They're not going to be able to do that anymore. That's called dispersed camping. And we know that although this proclamation says we're going to try to promote it, but if it doesn't damage anything. We know how it works. We've seen it with the Mojave National Preserve. We've seen it with the Sand to Snow National Monument and several other monuments in our area, plus other areas of the western United States. So there's going to be an economic impact to the surrounding communities.
Proponents are saying that this is going to bring more visitors. This designation is going to bring more tourism to the area.
It could bring those that can traverse the areas. They're going to need off-road. They're going to need four-wheel drive vehicles in many cases. Sometimes some of the roads can be traversed by a two-wheel drive. But what we've seen on our side is that there's a lot more people that recreate out there when there is no designation of a monument than there will be when there is a monument. So if that were to come to fruition, like the proponent coalition says, that's going to take years. It's going to take many years for that to happen. But the things that most people enjoy now are going to dwindle and go away.
And you yourself, you're a miner, and this is
Yes.
going to have an impact on mining too. Can you tell us what will be the impact on mining?
When a national monument designation happens, or a park, national park or a preserve, or any of the National Park Service units, as they call them, they're closed off to any new mineral exploration, which means you cannot go in there to search for, locate, and mine. There is a clause because of the 1872 mining law and subsequent amendments to that, that existing miners can be grandfathered to continue what they're doing in a monument. And the problem with that, one of the things I was fighting, is that under Bureau of Land Management rules, which we small-scale miners, which we use hand tools, metal detectors, things of that nature, cause negligible disturbance to the land. We cannot use heavy equipment. We pay an annual leasing fee of $15 for the mineral rights to a claim, anywhere from 20 acres to 160 acres per claim. The National Park Service rules do not delineate between casual use miners, us that use hand tools, and the large-scale commercial miners, which bring in all the heavy equipment and, it cause a lot of damage to the land. But we are getting critical minerals out while we're doing that. The National Park Service rules would require every miner, regardless of what you were. So us small-scale miners we're looking at spending tens of thousands of dollars, upward of $100,000, to prepare a plan of operations application that may or may not be approved by the Park Service, just so that we could go out there and find a little bit of gold each year. If we were lucky, we find a half ounce to an ounce in a year. Why would we spend all these hundreds of, tens of thousands of dollars to do that and then be told, no, you can't? The last two times that someone put together something like this for land acquired by the Joshua Tree National Park, they were denied. They were denied. So basically what it means is it's the end of all mining.
Even if you have a claim?
If you have a claim.
Even if you have a claim there?
If you have a claim there, you're going to end up losing it because you can't afford to
do the
abide
study,
by
to show the study, and then you have
Right,
to see if you get approved.
because you
or
have
not.
to get a certified geologist to come out and say there's enough gold here to economically continue to mining. And a lot of times for our small scale miners, that's not possible. We get it, we enjoy doing it, but it's not always profitable, even though that's our hopes that we're going to find a big find. So when a monument happens, even though there's a way to grandfather mining, it's not economical to do so. So it effectively gets rid of all mining, which is exactly what the coalition, the proponent coalition, advertised on their website. We want to stop all mining. That was in their advertisement because we couldn't afford it. So one of the things that I was fighting for is, if this monument is going to happen, why can't we allow the miners to continue to use BLM rules, which is minimal cost, and not have to use Park Service rules? And the reason is because I found out early that the BLM is going to continue to manage the land in perpetuity. The Park Service never will manage the land, even though a monument is a Park Service unit. I'm like, okay. So I asked for three things. I asked for once I realized I wasn't going to be able to stop the whole monument. I said, take out the Joshua Tree National Park expansion area, the Eagle Mountains. That was saved. I was not aware it was saved until after he signed it, because they didn't tell me they were going to grant it to me, but they did. Second thing was allow the miners to continue using BLM rules with minimal cost. That too was granted. The third thing I asked for was keep all present Bureau of Land Management open route designations in place. Don't close any of them. They granted that. So I got all three things that I asked for, but I didn't know it until after it was signed and delivered.
Now, Greg, you're still passionate about this, and you still want to fight it. Why?
Because of the abuse of the Antiquities Act. What I've learned in my research is that in the almost 120 years that the Antiquities Act has been around, for the first 100 years, presidents and their administrations adhered to the spirit of the act. Let's protect something of historical or scientific significance, and let's make it the smallest area possible. For 100 years, we did it right. And then we've grown in the last 2 decades 1,000% more protected land because of the way the Antiquities Act is being abused.
So 10 times more?
10 times more. 90% of the land protected now by the Antiquities Act has only occurred in the last 20 plus years.
Wow.
It's pretty incredible. The problem that it's twofold. We need to fix the Antiquities Act so that presidents can't abuse it by either perhaps delineating a specific number of acreages he can approve, and then it has to go to Congress for further approval, whatever that is, 500, 5,000, something. And then that way they can't take 624,000 acres or 1 million acres like up in Alaska under President Carter, things of that nature. The second point is when we lock up lands in a national monument or any National Park Service unit, like I said before, we can no longer go in there and locate and get the minerals out. This is a strategic issue of national security for our nation. Rare earth minerals are in a lot of these monuments that are out there. Rare earth minerals we need for our Defense Department, for armament,
chips,
weapons, stealth fighters, you name it. Right now, as you know, President Trump is trying to work a deal with President Zelensky of Ukraine for his rare earth minerals, because we can't go in and get our own because they're locked up. The majority of our rare earths that we use for national defense come from China. And as we all know, there's tensions because of Taiwan. There's tensions because now the Panama Canal, where China and the U.S. are butting heads. What happens when China says enough's enough, we're going to go do what we want, and you're not getting any more of our rare earths? We're going to just cut you off. It's going to hurt our national security efforts to be able to defend this nation when we need to. Now, the proponent coalition is going to tell you, well, wait a minute now. The president can declare a national emergency in Congress, a declaration of war. Then we can go in and get all those minerals in all these places. Yes, but what they know and neglect to tell you is, first of all, it takes time. You have to go in and locate the materials. You have to mobilize mining companies and corporations to go in and extract it from the ground. Then you have to build the infrastructure to process those materials, which is now being done overseas. So we don't even have the infrastructure to do a lot of this right now. Just to get to that raw form, let's say titanium or uranium or one of the rare earths, so that we can give it to the defense contractors to say, here, build me a stealth bomber. Build me this munition. Build me what we need to fight this war. It will take years once we open up the lands to get there. Our point is we need access to those lands now. We need access to the minerals that are there now and the energy resources like oil, coal. Geothermal is one that the Chuckwalla National Monument, has but can't use now. So there's a lot of lithium mines down in that southern portion area of the Chuckwalla National Monument.
So they cannot expand anymore, can they?
Correct. We cannot mine any of those inside monuments at all. And there are efforts by many groups to try to fix that and get us back on track. I know Public Lands for the People is one that is trying to introduce legislation to try to get it so that we can have access to our minerals that are on all these lands for our national defense. Hopefully, Lord willing, we won't have to go to war, but we need to be prepared in case we do.
Now, in terms of you mining out there,
Yes.
you and you guys, a group of you, right? That
Correct. Yes, I am the former president and action officer for the firstclassminers.com. It's a group of about 200 family members up in the high desert Joshua Tree area. We have several claims in the surrounding mountains and desert. We get together and we provide education to our members and others on the rich history of California and how gold mining got it started, and how the old-timer miners did it in yesteryear, and how we as casual use miners do it pretty much the same way today, except we have a metal detector out there they didn't have. Helps us some. But we enjoy doing this, and we go to different organizations and provide education, stuff like that. And we have fun getting out there as groups to go gold mining. As a retired Marine, I'm also a disabled veteran. We've got a bunch of us disabled veterans who have found that mining out in the deserts and mountains where there's nothing is extremely physically and mentally therapeutic for us. So that was the other reason I wanted to save the claims that we have in the Eagle Mountains.
And for those of us that may not know, when you say mining, people will think of these big trucks coming in and, digging. What does it look like for you guys?
Well, we go where the old timers went because they didn't get it all.
These are mines, like old mines?
Old mining areas.
Areas.
There's two types of mining. Most of us small-scale miners, we do what's called placer mining, and that's where the gold is already eroded out from the host rock, most often quartz, sometimes magnetite, and it's laying about under the surface, in the dirt, sometimes on top, and we go find it. The other type of mining is called lode mining, L-O-D-E, and that's where you're digging a tunnel to get to a vein, get to the vein of quartz, to dig it out and process it and get the gold out that way. Us small-scale miners, no, that's too much work. We like to stick to the placer mining, the stuff that's already eroded out, and see if we can go find it. You go where the old-timers went, and you look to see, in that particular area, what they may have been working on. They didn't get it all, obviously. And we use our metal detectors. It picks up all metal. So we might pick up 100 pieces of trash before we pick up a single nugget. And we use something called...
Is there trash out there from the old days?
Trash out there from the old days. Everything from disintegrated tin cans from the 1800s that are still out there, early 1900s. Bullets, sometimes...
Bullets from back in the day.
Bullets from back in the day. You can always tell a very old bullet because the lead will be white, and it's old that way. And then over the decades, people go out and recreational shooting and stuff like that. So you're going to find their bullets. So actually, we're cleaning up the land as miners. We're pulling that lead out of there that was not originally there, in its natural form. So we are cleaning up stuff like that. And once in a while, we'll come across, a little nugget or maybe a little bit bigger nugget. Most of us don't get rich, but it's every miner's hope that we're going to hit the big one. And I only know 2 that have.
And what about other things? So you guys just go after gold, right?
Correct.
Or do you look for lithium and other minerals too?
No, we don't look for lithium, stuff like that. We are strictly gold. It is a hobby. We don't call it recreational, but it is a hobby for us. But we're trying to make a little, hopefully make a lot. But but most people are not going to get rich going out gold mining. Like I said, I only know a couple of people that have struck it big and made a few $100,000s just in picking up nuggets and digging them up out of the ground. Just by doing it the way we do with hand tools. Picks and shovels, that's it. That's it. We can't use heavy equipment. We are forbidden from using heavy equipment. Or then we have to do a plan of operations with the Bureau of Land Management and go through that very expensive process. No, we'll do it as a hobby and see if we can't make a few bucks on it.
So Greg, out of this experience, it looks
Yes.
like you're taking a stance on to make sure the law is followed correctly.
I am a retired Marine. I fought for this country, and I believe in our Constitution. I believe in our ability to be able to defend ourselves. So it's a national security issue that I'm going to take on this fight for. Two is the Constitution and all its subsequent regulations, including the 1976 Federal Land Policy Management Act, says public lands are mandated to be used as multi-use lands. And recreation is one of them. And the public lands belong to the public. I want to continue having that. When you lock land up, you are denying the public from using the land to its fullest extent when you lock it up into a national monument or a national park. Yes, there are good reasons to protect a lot of things out there. And I think it's wonderful that this country can do that. But when you start abusing it and you take lands away from the public that don't need protection, then you're overstepping your bounds. I believe that public lands belong to the public, and we need to keep it that way. So it's kind of twofold for me with the national security and keeping public lands public. And I think because of the way the proclamation is written, with that one sentence in particular, that we have a good shot, and this is just me speaking, I'm not a lawyer, we have a good shot of getting a drastic reduction in the Chuckwalla National Monument. Now, if I had it my way, what I would do is send a loud and clear message to those conservationists and environmentalists that like to abuse it just to lock land up. And I would rescind the whole thing and say, you want to break the law, which you did in this Antiquities Act. You broke it. You didn't live up to the spirit of it either. We're going to take the whole thing away from you. And if you want it, then submit your bill to Congress. But like we already know, Congressman Ruiz already knows, Congress is not going to pass this because there's a lot more scrutiny put on it, and they get public comment from all stakeholders, unlike the Antiquities Act. It was not required to do that. None of the stakeholders that were opposing this were talked to at all. The proponent coalition put this together and submitted it as quietly as they could until I and others exposed it. And then they had no choice but to start talking about it. But I think we need to send a loud and clear message that if you're going to break the law, and the Antiquities Act is a law, this is what happens. We're going to take it away, and then you do it the right way through Congress.
And why do you do it?
Why do I do it? Because it's my passion. It's my passion. I don't like seeing folks come in taking stuff that doesn't make sense. Let's leave the land the way it was intended to be used and the way our government laws tell us to use the lands. If there's something within that land to protect that. Don't take the whole area and just say, we think there's likely more stuff yet to be discovered, so we're going to take it all.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And Greg Herring with First Class Miners, it was great to have you on California Insider.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time here.